Welcome to the CTA Foundation's CES 2021 interview series. My name is Joellen Gray. I'm a principal at Gray Matter Advisory Services and a trustee at the Consumer Technology Association Foundation. I'm joined today with Brad Turner, Vice President of Global Education and Literacy at Benetech, and Katy Beehler, Product Manager at Benetech. Welcome, Brad and Katy.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Great. I'm so excited to talk to you. But first of all, let me just ask you a really basic question. For those who don't know about Benetech, can you share some of the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Benetech is a company that acts as a bridge between the social sector and the technology sector, in that we use technology to scale solutions for social good. One of our larger initiatives is in the global education and literacy sector, where we provide books that are accessible to people who have a disability that affects their use of printed material. For example, if you're blind or low vision, if you have a learning disability like dyslexia, or if you have a mobility impairment that keeps you from using a book, a printed book, we give you the ability to access that content in a different way: audio, braille, a specialized format that highlights text and synchronizes that with audio. So lots of different ways to access that content. We help people who are in underserved populations get access to content. Benetech also does work in the social sector, for example, providing a social safety net for underserved populations, homeless people, for example, where we're helping provide a database of social services, pro bono legal help, food banks, pro bono medical help, that type of thing. So lots of work scaling technology to help underserved populations.
So actually, it's quite interesting when you're talking about helping underserved populations like homeless, like people in poverty. How do they have access to technology to be able to use your services?
Yeah, it's a great question. So people in poverty and homeless often aren't running around with a cell phone and they're the latest iPhone on the unlimited plan, but they do have access to some of the social services, providing an accurate database of other services to each of the services that those people use is what's important. So if I go to a homeless shelter and in the morning I need to figure out where my next meal is coming from, if that homeless shelter can't help direct me, that becomes a problem. If they can say, oh, you know what, the closest food bank is 3 blocks down, but they're full today, and so go 6 blocks the other direction. So it's really building the database that gets shared among the service providers as much as with the direct participant.
Oh, that's interesting. And how did you find that may have changed during this COVID-19 period, if at all?
No, it's changed a lot because what the places Benetech focuses have become really important within the social sector, especially during the pandemic. More and more people are out of work. More and more people are homeless, and we see the potential for a huge problem as rents stop being protected. In the education sector, our increase in membership, we normally sign up a certain number of students each month. That tripled in March and in April because all of a sudden students were out of school. And so providing those books to those students where normally they would walk into a resource room and the teacher would hand them the book, now all of a sudden they aren't walking to a resource room because they're out of school. There were 1.6 billion children out of school around the world in the late spring. And so all of a sudden none of those students had access to a resource room or a teacher who could help them with their materials, they came to Bookshare to get those materials that allowed them to continue to learn and read. Same thing with seniors, interestingly, in that the isolation became even worse, and so the ability to provide seniors with more content, more material, more interactivity is very, very important during the pandemic.
Did this force you as an organization to grow or change in what you do?
You know, what it forced us to do is make sure we were being as efficient as possible. We have looked at other ways to support other populations. You know, the voice user interface is a really, really important piece of work that we're doing because of the support for a much broader audience. But with the influx of work that we were getting, you know, we couldn't afford to not continue to look at the efficiencies that we were working under and just really hone the job of what we're doing around the world. And then focus in on making sure, you know, if we have to choose between two projects, let's make sure we choose one that has the most impact. And again, this voice user interface is critically important because that's the way a much broader percentage of the population is able to access some of the content we're providing.
So we were thrilled to be able to support the whole voice assist part of the Bookshare program. Can you talk a little bit about the progress that you've made on that project?
Yeah, absolutely. So we see Bookshare Reader for Alexa and Bookshare Reader for Google as opportunities to not only embrace new technological trends and be on the cutting edge of innovative technologies like voice user interfaces, but also as an avenue to provide a way of engaging with Bookshare that introduces conversation to isolated individuals, which Brad was just mentioning, and then giving students another way to access required reading materials when maybe they're not in a classroom setting and the teacher isn't present anymore, especially in the COVID era. And it also gives us all, you know, a broader opportunity to read all those books for pleasure that we've been, you know, sorely missing, and gives us another way to engage with Bookshare in a new and exciting manner. And with the help of the CTA Foundation, we're really excited to announce that Bookshare Reader for Alexa will be going into beta in just a few, hopefully short weeks within this first quarter of 2021. And what we're doing is we're seeking individuals who qualify for Bookshare membership to reach out to us and to inquire about doing user testing with us. This will be an open beta, as I said, and we're looking to engage and get more user feedback on how we're progressing with the voice user interface on Alexa in particular right now, and soon in 2021 also on Google. And, you know, just to give an idea of what that would look like if you were, you know, reaching out to us, or if you already are, you know, a Bookshare member who's helping us with this project, users will be able to select and read audiobooks from their Alexa and Google playlists or reading lists on their Bookshare accounts. They'll be able to engage with the book. So if I am a member and I'm listening to my, you know, textbook for class, or my book that's, you know, my favorite classic that I always go back to on a cold winter day. If I step away and leave my, you know, Alexa or Google device and I, you know, wander off to go do chores or something like that, when I come back, the Bookshare for a reader for Alexa and Google will actually ask, would you like to continue where you left off, and prompt you to continue engaging with that work and really bring that conversation together. So you'll be interacting with your Alexa device and really talking to her and Google in the future about where you are with this book. And it's a really exciting way to, I think, continue reading your favorites or maybe your required text for class. And you'll be able to also navigate within that book. So if you miss something and you want to go back, you'll be able to do that. If you want to skip ahead, you'll be able to do that. And of course, pause and exit the book altogether. And what I think is really great about this and having the reading list available is that you'll be able to have multiple books simultaneously. So I might be bouncing between my textbook for class or my book for reading for pleasure, and I'll be able to pick up where I left off in either or all of those. And then what we've done most recently is based on user feedback actually, is we've created a pretty robust help menu because there are a lot of new users to the voice user interface. We're seeing very exponential growth and adoption on voice devices in the US and in particular among senior populations. And that means we need to help everyone to understand how do you interact with the Bookshare reader on Alexa or Google. And so we've built out a tutorial and a shortcuts menu. So if you say, hi Bookshare, can you please help me, understand what to do next, we can do that. So that's where we've started, and we're really excited to get more feedback, as I said, in 2021 and the early parts of this year from our users to understand better what would make this product even more encompassing and inclusive. And what I think we see next is that we're going to probably launch in this particular set that we already had, continue taking in user feedback, and what our next goal will be is search and discovery with your voice. So right now, you would do it on the website, but the next stage, of course, is making sure that as you're speaking with your Alexa or Google, you can say, I'm looking for this newest book by my favorite author. Can you download that onto my reading list and interact with it that way?
Cool. So I know that we were funding the voice assist portion of the search and discovery element. In your proposal, you also talked about a second phase, an assessment of the existing feature set kind of through a social inclusion lens. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how do you envision that happening and what its goal is?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of taking this on a two-pronged approach. So the first piece is that we're making sure that our user groups that we're working with very closely span the large population of Bookshare membership. So we see a Bookshare Reader for Alexa and Bookshare Reader for Google as being a very inclusive device almost out the gate, right? Voice technology is in many ways simpler to use for people who aren't as familiar with technology. It becomes accessible for many people through just the speech technology itself. But what we're looking to do is make sure that we're looking at students through seniors, different areas and populations, and we're working with library partners to test these in specific populations as well to get their feedback. And we're also looking to see what other opportunities we have to develop more camaraderie or community or inclusion with those different populations. So along with our user group testing, we'll be asking for interest in what kinds of ways could we make it more engaging for you as the user. And that may not be, Bookshare Reader for Alexa specifically. It might become its own entity in a way, that community, but trying to bring that community together. I think what we want to do first is find out where that interest lies. So in the near term, what we're looking for is input from Bookshare members to find out, is it a book club, or is it an interaction with the reader itself? Is it just simplicity of use? Is it an online forum? What spaces does it make the most sense for us to engage with? With our favorite books, and of course we are a little partial to book clubs because we already have some, and how do we make that available on voice would be our initial thought there. But I'm certainly looking forward to hearing what other people think that means inclusivity includes.
That's really, really interesting. So I could see you moving in different directions. Essentially, I love this notion of creating more sort of social interaction through this avenue of book accessibility. Have you also looked at other content beyond books, like making television entertainment more accessible or something like that?
That's a very interesting question. I might ask Brad to weigh in because I know that he's been looking at different avenues as well. We've mostly focused on books, as Bookshare kind of implies, though we have thought about different, I guess, different formats or different ways that books kind of are created. So now, of course, a lot of our members and through voice, you would be listening to an audiobook, right? You'd be listening to an audio format of a text. And in the recent years in publishing, we have seen trends to more in EPUB format specifically to have something more integrated, maybe media overlays with videos and all of these, complex formats. But I don't know I won't speak for Bookshare on this particular piece, whether we're going to go forward into different media concepts. But Brad, have we thought about that in a different way? Am I thinking more narrowly than maybe we could be?
No. You're absolutely on the right track, and Joellen, it's a great question. When Bookshare started 20 years ago, we were sharing scanned copies of books, mostly in Braille. And as our membership has grown and become more diverse, we have added more and more formats. So, and I mentioned a few of them, and Katie's mentioned a couple of them. Audiobooks, of course, electronic Braille, which is played on a assistive technology device that highlighted text synchronized with audio that I mentioned, a industry standard EPUB, and a Microsoft Word format that allows people to take notes and use it effectively with a screen reader. The law that we operate under is specifically for people with a print disability, blind, low vision, learning disability, or mobility impairment that affects their use of printed material. That sort of limits us when it comes to other types of media, but that doesn't remove the need to be able to support other people with other types of disabilities. So we've started to look at doing things with media for the deaf and hard of hearing, with media for people with cognitive challenges. So we've certainly started looking and exploring those pathways. The need is vast. The literacy rate in the deaf and hard of hearing community is lower than the literacy rate in the blind community, because learning to read is very phonetic. And so how do we, as really a leader in literacy for people with disabilities, how do we support that? I'll flip it around. How do we break that cycle? So can we work with media producers other than publishers to say, how do we adapt this movie, this TV show, whatever it might be, to deaf and hard of hearing? How can we enter that into the system that we've already built, which does distribution of media? It's just we're distributing books right now in multiple forms. Can we distribute a book in a sign language form? So we've definitely started looking into that.
That's great. There's obviously so much technology that could really help, and technology that's emerging that will be able to help in the future. And here we are at CES 2021, and we're going to be seeing all kinds of new and emerging technologies. Are there any that hold a particular interest to you, not even from a Benetech perspective, but from a personal perspective?
I'll start, Brad. I think that I'll show my bias a little bit here, but voice is still super exciting to me. I actually just started engaging with the voice technology last year when I had joined Benetech recently and started working with the CTA Foundation on our Smart Speaker project, and I've kind of fallen in love with it. I think it's really a wonderful technology in so many aspects, and as I kind of mentioned earlier, I find it to be incredibly inclusive, almost natively, and increasingly more inclusive as time goes on. Especially what I'm following are companies like Google with their Project Understood collaboration, and thinking about how we can make voice technologies more accessible to individuals with different speech patterns and dialects and accents. And I find it just so wonderful that that's the kind of avenue that we're already pursuing in this new emerging technology. And then from a even more personal standpoint, I have an anthropology background, and I find the idea of conversational dialogue and social conventions around talking with your computer to be just absolutely fascinating. So with that, I think I'm still enamored by voice, and I think I will be in the next, couple of years. But one avenue that Brad and I both share also a passion for is AI and artificial intelligence. And specifically at Benetech, Brad and I have overlapped a little bit here. We've worked on some projects recently, but I know Brad is maybe more passionate about AI, so I'm gonna let him weigh in on that, because he and I share that passion, but his is maybe more ardent there.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. There's so many things AI can do for us in this field itself, in the transformation of books into the appropriate formats, into making that media accessible. Text becomes pretty easy, but other types of media become much more challenging. What do you do about charts, graphs, diagrams, pictures? If you can't see the Mona Lisa, how do you accurately describe it? What is a saddle point in physics, and how do you describe that? So lots of different things that we can use AI for there. And then of course, the impact on society that AI is going to have, just beyond the disability field, the impact on society for everything from, personal fitness to healthcare to, it's far ranging. So that's fascinating. That stuff is fascinating to me.
So this is going to be a great week for you as we go through CES 2021. That's great. So for people who want to know more about Bookshare and Benetech, where do they go for that information?
Yeah, we hope you come visit our websites. You can go to bookshare.org or benetech.org, or you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all the social medias. And please, if you are interested in the Smart Speaker project, I encourage you to reach out to me at smartspeaker@benetech.org to get involved. If you're a Bookshare member already and have an Alexa or Google device, we'd be happy to have you in our test opportunities.
That's great. Well, thank you both, Brad and Katy. This has really been a pleasure talking with you. And for those in the audience who are interested in knowing more about the Consumer Technology Association Foundation, you can go to ctafoundation.tech.